I'm Ray Dickey, South Carolina CAI, Hudson Valley CAI Association Help Now. Numerous states are covered. You know where you're from. We are going to be doing today, you will have to deal with hoarders. I think it's a pretty fair statement. I think sooner or later, if you have a large enough association, you're going to have to deal with it. And it's not easy. And it's a complete pain in the neck. Then we're going to talk about, is it hype or is structural concrete in bad shape? I think I know the answer. I think it's in bad shape, but we'll see what Scott says because he would know because that's what he does for a living. We're going to do Q&A if we have time. Maybe we'll stay a little bit later for those who really have to have some answers. I don't mind if I can have some of our panelists stay. That would be great. Tomorrow, different regions, different states, but we're going to do hoarders again, but we're going to do police requests. You know, when they come knocking on your door, hey, I want to know where Bob is or something, you know, should you help them out or should you not in Q&A? Also tomorrow, these have become very popular manager leader panels. That's where I have managers on. They kind of do most of the talking. And then I have our industry professionals jump on. Dawn, you've been doing them and I've actually learned a lot from them. How about you?
I've definitely learned a lot.
Next week, South Carolina people, if you don't go to one of these expos, you're missing out on a lot. That's all I have to tell you because everybody worked really hard on them. Greenville's going to be like workshops. I'm going to give you ping pong balls and you're going to get to throw them at people. That's all I have to say. Okay. It's going to be a lot of fun. And in Somerville, there's like 3 simultaneous kind of classes running at the same time. No, you didn't miss the CEU list. I got to get to it. So by all means, please try to get to the South Carolina Expo. They are going to be a big hit this year. And I'm going to actually send people a message on that to everyone. And there's the link if you need it, if that works out for people. Also, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I've been doing things a lot on the last minute. I'm not sending out like 1,000 emails. That's just not going to work. So what I'm going to do is just, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, you'll get kind of like these last minute interviews that I do with people. And I'll send that also out to everyone. So that's a good way to keep up. And I do have a lot of last minute stuff I do with managers and lawyers and stuff like that. Okay. For all those worried about CEUs, here we go. If you are here for CEUs, I'm going to launch a poll. Let's see, launch. I hate this new system. Just click which one you need. It's multiple choice. So if you need more than one, let me know. If I end up closing the poll before you have time to fill it out, don't worry. Everyone has a question feature. And I appreciate that people are already using it by telling me, hey, Ray, did you forget to do the CEUs? And audience, I like you keeping tabs on me. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm easily thrown off. That is how you communicate. That's how you ask questions. It's so boring for me when I don't hear from the audience. I just feel like I'm all by myself and I got to ask all the questions. I really love the questions. I don't use people's names, so you should feel free to ask whatever you'd like. A bit of a disclaimer, I could make a mistake, so maybe don't send me anything too top secret. And if I close that poll, just say, hey, Ray, I need CEUs. If you're here from Florida, you're going to have to do something else extra. That's the way Florida works. I don't make the rules. Right, Dawn? I don't make the rules. I don't make the rules of the world. So that's what you'll have to do. With that being said, we are finally able to have our panel introduce themselves. And I'll start with who I see first, and that is Sean.
Morning, my name is Sean O'Connor. I'm an attorney. I'm a shareholder with the law firm of Clarkson, McAleenis, and O'Connor. Our office is in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and we have a statewide community association law practice, a full practice, clients all over the state and all markets and regions of South Carolina. I'm very active in our South Carolina CAI chapter. I've been on the board for a number of years, was the president of the chapter in 2023, serve on our Blue Ribbon panel, and as a chapter board liaison to our Legislative Action Committee, and also serve on the CAI National Business Partners Council as well.
And Sean is willing to challenge any viewer to any sport because he's a great sportsman. Hockey and tennis in particular. As long as you film it, we will set it up. Sean will challenge you. I don't know what the prize will be. Sean, are you up for that challenge? If you're a board member or manager with potential business.
I say, bring it, don't sing it.
Right. As long as there's possible, as long as your potential billable hours manager or board member, Sean will challenge you. Okay. Next is international property owner, John Lagumia. John?
I am not an international property owner. John Lagumina from the Lagumina Law Firm in Purchase, New York. We represent condominiums, co-ops, and homeowner associations from New York City throughout the Hudson Valley areas.
All right. Elliot, brand new. Thank you so much for being here.
Good, thanks for having me. My name's Elliot Engstrom. I'm an attorney with Sellers Heirs. We're located in Charlotte. I, along with my colleagues, Steve Sellers and Cynthia Jones, are also licensed in South Carolina as well as North Carolina. And we deal with all kinds of HOA issues, from collections to enforcement to governing documents. And every day is something new when you're an HOA attorney. So it's an interesting job.
Yeah, and Elliot's going to be back. And by the way, Elliot, if you tell me anything about yourself, I will completely exaggerate it live on the live stream, just so you're aware of that. Next is Deb Girelli from the Girelli Empire in New York.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Girelli. I'm the Vice President of Girelli Insurance Agency. We're located here in Cold Spring, New York. We are able to handle master policies for community associations in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. And I do have my CERMS designation from CAI National. I also sit on the board of the local Hudson Valley chapter.
And I'm doing, thanks, Deb. I'm doing this so Elliot gets to know you guys a little bit. Next is Dawn. Elliot, Dawn has parrots. She has dogs. She has a cellar full of arcade games. They have motorcycles. It is like an amusement park at her house.
Yes, and if you come over, you can ask Jennifer from Hotwire. We'll also go shooting. So thank you for having me. My name is Dawn Becker-Durnan, and like Deb, I'm also a CERMS insurance agent. I am the practice leader on behalf of Acroshores Community Association Practice in the East Division, and we provide insurance on a national basis for all types of businesses, but in our division, just for community associations. So that could be your large scale HOA to your 10-member HOA to a high rise.
Dave Byrne.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Byrne. I am the chairperson of my law firm's community association practice. We represent condominiums, cooperatives, homeowners associations in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania.
Elliot, Dave is an animal lover. He truly is. He feeds deers bananas. He adopts dogs that can't hear, missing legs. He's just a true animal lover. You are, Dave, right? Admit it. You love animals.
I am. I wish I could do more.
Yep, I know. I believe it. I absolutely believe it. Scott.
How you doing, everybody? So my name is Scott Barieski, and I'm from South Shore Construction. I'm the owner and president of the company, and my company specializes in the repairs, maintenance, and protection of building facades and parking garages throughout New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Connecticut.
All right, and I don't rarely do this, but I rarely do it. I admire, Scott does a great job on his LinkedIn page of putting a lot of photos on concrete work, so I've gone ahead and sent everybody that link. That being said, everybody's information, there's a packet, just download it. And if you can't download it and you have a problem, just send me a message or email me and I'll send you, it has everybody's contact information. And I also included, Scott has a full maintenance sheet also, so that's also downloadable. And if you have a problem downloading it, let me know and I will make sure that you get to it. Yes, you did miss the CEU list, but all you need to do is just send me that you need CEUs. Who just sent me that note. So just say I need CEUs and I'll make sure that you get it. It's never a problem. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to have everybody jump off except for Scott. We're going to spend about 18 minutes on concrete. And I kind of went with this direction, Scott. Is it hype or is structural concrete in bad shape? Man, we're hearing horror stories, and I'm hearing horror stories from people. And I'm seeing your photos before you get there. It's not your work, it's other people. And they look like horror stories, the photos I'm seeing.
Well, I mean, listen, so obviously I'm cherry picking those photos, right? But I mean, they're real photos of real circumstances that we're encountering on projects and or, buildings that we're looking at. So the stuff is real, needs to be taken care of. And, there's some serious consequences behind it for the condominium owners.
It's bad, Scott. Some of the stuff I see, I know you're cherry picking them, I look at some of the stuff and I say, I cannot believe people saw this every day and didn't feel like this was an emergency. Am I wrong?
Well, that's the crazy thing, in my opinion, because I mean, I go to these things, and because I'm in the business, I mean, my eyes, like, even if I go to a place, I'm not doing a job at it. It's somewhere I'm shopping, going to a stadium or whatever it is. I see these places, and my eyes immediately go to all the things because I'm in the business, right? And I think if nobody else sees this stuff, like, you look up, there's a piece of concrete ready to fall from the ceiling. You're going to park your car there, and people do every single day. It blows my mind.
I cannot remember, like, the stuff I'm seeing is so obvious. I don't even see all the hidden dangers, which we're going to talk about here. You're probably seeing like so much. You're seeing like 1,000 more things that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the incredibly obvious thing, and also rusted beams. I've seen photos of rusted steel all the way through, rusted rebar. I'll just have to ask it one more time. What explanation do you get of why this was allowed to get to the point that it does?
I mean, most of the time it's a combination of, people not giving enough attention and weight to it, and also budgets, because the thing is, like, it almost seems like it doesn't make sense, right? Like, if you don't maintain your structure, okay, you won't have a structure. So it's like, how are people not maintaining this? I don't know. But at the same time, people are very willing to overlook this because it's not a fun and sexy expense. It's not like, hey, we redid our lobby, we redid our gym, our plaza deck, right? So what happens is, at the end, the garage or a balcony or whatever it might be, it looks exactly like it did before and like it's supposed to, except now it's fixed, right? But it's not like it's so appealing that you feel like you spent all these great dollars to upgrade the thing. It just looks like it's supposed to so that it can function properly. So it's not a fun expense.
So I didn't lie with my topic today. Is it hype or structural concrete in bad shape? It's in bad shape, right?
It's in bad shape. I would say, throughout the country. I mean, I see this in the different markets I work in. Like I mentioned, I'm in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut. It's all over the place. If you think about it, like, there was a huge amount of construction that happened in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And, I mean, sometimes it's almost crazy to think. You're like, wow, I mean, the 2000s, 25 years later, right? But you go back and you say, that means that these buildings are 25, 35, 45 years old. I mean, especially in the Northeast, you have freeze thaw, salting, snow, ice, all the different conditions that lead to the deterioration. And of course, anything that's along the ocean, is susceptible to, like, salts and all the other corrosive things that can happen, conditions that can create corrosion and deterioration.
Well, my goal today, audience, is to, I hate to say it, scare you to a certain, or make you have enough concern that you hire a professional to walk through your property if you have not done so. And don't even assume that it is safe until a professional looks at it, like Scott or an engineering firm. All right. So what are some of the telltale signs besides, like, the obvious ones? You're a pro. So, like, what would you see, but maybe no one else is going to notice? That's bad news.
Well, here's the thing, right? So people think like it's a secret. It's not a secret. Okay. It's not, everything is visual. Okay. You see cracks in concrete, you see the rusted steel, you see a concrete spall, which is essentially, like an industry term for the rebar inside of it expanded and kind of popped the face off of the concrete. So you're seeing all these different things, and actually you don't need to be a professional to see it. That's what I'm always trying to promote on my LinkedIn page and other things like that. Now, you might not know how to fix it. You may not know the severity of it. And that's when you want to bring a professional in to give you some guidance on it, right? But everything is very visual and apparent for anybody, regardless of your level of expertise. It's like, if it looks like a problem, it is a problem. It's just, what level of problem do you have?
All right. So now I'm nervous because I just told the audience that they need to have a professional basically inspect their property because they may not notice things. And I feel like you just said the opposite thing. Can you just kind of re-clarify that? I don't think board members and managers should be doing their own concrete inspections because.
Yeah, sure. No. So in my point of saying what I was saying, is that, so once you start to see some of these things, you absolutely want to bring a professional in to look at it and give an evaluation of it and let you know, what the severity is, what you should be doing about it, how important it is to fix, and things like that. But my point being that it's not like, something that, anybody can't see. I mean, all this stuff is very visual, and in a quick walkthrough, you can see it. And the moment you start to see some of these things, you should bring it to somebody's attention to have it looked at, so that you can know if it's something that needs to be addressed right away, or if you have a little bit of time.
I know, like, and you're not working on my building. We have a huge project going on, but I know that there were small cracks and things like that that ended up being real structural issues when they did like X-rays and things like that. So that was a case, like, to me, it looked just like a crack, like concrete cracks, right? But it ended up being a big deal. And $20 million later, we're still working on it, but it is a big deal, right? I meant things should not be cracked and they should not be rusted, correct?
That's right. I mean, they're going to happen over time, because any construction material, any building material, I mean, think about it. It's like roofing, siding, windows, decking, right? Anything deteriorates over time. So, everything has a certain lifespan. And just like you mentioned, that's one of those situations, right? So you looked at the crack. I mean, the crack in itself told you that there was a problem. Now, you didn't know the level of the problem, and you had to bring a professional in, right? But it wasn't like you didn't have the ability, to see the crack, even though you're not in the business of, maintaining buildings, fixing concrete, an engineer or anything like that. You don't have a background, but you have eyes, and you can see, hey, a crack in the concrete's a problem. Now let's go see what we have to do about it. And that's what everybody should be thinking about and doing, because sometimes a crack can be something very basic, and literally you can route it open and put some caulk in there because it's a non-structural crack. And other times it is a structural crack that tells you have a more severe problem somewhere else that needs to be addressed right away.
So we had a lot of, I don't know if this is common, but our situation with the cracks was it got to the rebar. So can you kind of take it from there and once again, just kind of reinforce the idea of how a small crack could really be a big unseen problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, see, for me, I normally say that, like a crack is a superhighway to deterioration, because already concrete is porous, and so moisture penetrates it, and that's how it can get down to the rebar regardless. But once you have a crack, that's an opening straight to the rebar, which means every time it rains, it snows, ice, everything just goes straight to there. And so what happens is it speeds up the process of the rusting of the rebar and then the deterioration of the structure.
The risk of ignoring these issues. We all hear stories about buildings collapsing, but there's a bunch of other dangers, right? Which you mentioned, like falling concrete. I wish, could you communicate, this is dangerous stuff if you don't take care of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the most extreme thing is a collapse, right? And I want to say that that's the one-off, right? But has it happened? Certainly. I mean, there was the Surfside that everybody knows from years ago down in Florida, like that's the major one. But even about 2 years ago, there was a parking garage in New York that collapsed. Okay, so these things can happen. It may not be often, but it's serious, and that's why you can't ignore this stuff. But just from a safety standpoint, certainly you have things in the ceiling where you can have rusting rebar and a spall, and something can fall on a car or a person, and even in a floor situation, you could have slip and falls, people tripping over things, and so it can lead to physical harm and danger that could impact your insurance and all the other things everybody's worried about these days, right? Insurance rates are like crazy right now for condos.
Now, what I'd like you to do is make a big pitch for maintenance, because to me, I know, like here at my building, I feel like if we did maintenance all along, we're the perfect candidate of what you're talking about. We're a 40-year-old building. No one took care of it. I feel like if we had somebody doing regular maintenance on our concrete, we wouldn't even have these issues.
Well, absolutely. So the thing is, if you maintain the things, you only pay a fraction of the cost of what the repairs are ultimately going to be. Because here's the other thing to consider, right? The thing that you ignore, you're still going to have to do after you do the larger, more expensive repair. For example, it's like sometimes people don't maintain their caulk. And because they don't maintain their caulk, it allows the water to penetrate into their building, into other levels of a parking garage and things like that. And it starts to deteriorate other areas of your building, right? and it's like at the end of the day, after you fix those additional locations that were deteriorated from not repairing the caulk in the first place, you still have to repair the caulk. So doesn't it make sense to repair the cheaper thing up front on a more regular basis than to wait so long that you're repairing that and exponentially more expensive things on top of that?
And I want to have Deb and Dawn jump back on because I want to watch our time here because everybody loves to talk about hoarders. I don't know if you know that, Scott.
Yeah,
Everybody,
okay, no problem.
everybody hates hoarders. So
Yeah.
that's like always a popular topic. But so, I think your maintenance sheet here is fantastic. And I don't see, it seems to be like a no-brainer that you should be doing concrete maintenance, and you should have a set maintenance plan, correct?
Yeah, there should be a yearly inspection made, but certainly a large size building such as yours, for example. I mean, do you necessarily have to do it every single year? I don't know, but certainly every 3 to 5 years you want to do some serious maintenance around the property to try and prevent some of the larger scale repairs. Because and I'll wrap it up with this basically. I mean, you have this giant project that you're building going on, but I'm sure besides the cost of it, there's huge disruption to the entire building, and that's the other factor behind it.
The disruption it's mind-boggling. I cannot describe the amount of noise, and it's not the company's fault. The noise, the equipment, the weight of the equipment, the prep that has to be done to the building to put the equipment on the decks. It's the most disruptive. It's driving people crazy, Scott, to be honest with you. But you're used to this, right?
Yeah, we know how to navigate, and that's why you need to hire a professional who's in the business of it, because they know all about not only how to do the work properly and safely, but how to coordinate it and how to just navigate the whole process.
But it didn't have to get this far. Like if they had followed we have lack of parking now. If there was just a maintenance plan and they were calling someone in like yourself or an engineer or someone to look over the place every now and then and maintain it, it would be a hell of a lot less than $20 million. And we probably wouldn't be at this point.
It'd be less money, it'd be less time, less disruption, less closures and loss of use of portions of your building, whether it be a parking garage, a plaza deck, a balcony, all those things that I'm sure you're facing right now.
All right. So insurance. I'll start with Deb. Do you care if people maintain their concrete, or are you just happy, Deb, to wait till there's a catastrophe?
We care. We are constantly trying to educate boards that maintenance is a requirement. I know it costs money. It needs to be in your budgets. Insurance companies want you to be maintaining your properties, especially here in New York. They're starting to ask for structural engineer reports for buildings of a certain age, of a certain height. So yes, this is very important, needs to be done, needs to be talked about, needs to be addressed.
Dawn, please help me reinforce from someone who's experiencing this project firsthand. Please help me reinforce to the audience that they should have a concrete maintenance plan and have.
Well, I first want to say what you cannot insure, you maintain. So a maintenance plan is your insurance policy in a sense, because you are going to prevent collapses, you're going to prevent damage, you're going to prevent injuries from occurring, trips and falls, all sorts of things. And maintenance, as pointed out, when it's done preventively, does help reduce the cost. And as Deb mentioned, our insurance carriers are extremely interested in what the maintenance plan has been, what it is, and what it will be.
All right. Well, Scott, I'm going to send your maintenance plan out to everyone who is here and not here, because a lot of people watch the recordings, and then maybe we'll have you back to do some pre-recorded little maintenance segments, because that's how important I feel it is. Any last words, Scott, besides have someone come and this is important?
No, I think everybody just needs to raise the level of awareness of the issues that are happening at buildings, and the importance of maintaining and repairing your structure before something major does happen. It's easily avoidable. And, you just have to make it a priority and start budgeting for it, and just start, making it an issue.
All right, before I let you go, you're a construction owner, Scott. You have a facility, right? A location.
Yeah.
Are you one of those construction guys that put all your personal items in there? Because I know a lot of you guys do that. You put your boats in there, you put your race cars in there, you put your motorcycles in there. I go to Deb's laughing because she knows she's been to a lot of you construction guys store a lot of your personal, cool kind of man items in your facilities, in your warehouses. Are you that guy?
So I don't do a ton of it, but anything I can't
Okay.
fit in my
All right.
garage
Thank you.
goes straight to my warehouse.
There we go. Okay. Reinforced, stereotype, reinforced. Thank you, Scott, so much for being here, and keep up with the photos, and we'll have some follow-ups. Much
Absolutely.
appreciated.
Thank you so much.
All right. I will have everybody jump back on, please. I knew it, Deb. You know who I'm talking about too, right? Because you've seen the location.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
A lot. It's like a fun house over there with the amount of fun stuff that's in that. Great company. Don't get me wrong, but oh boy.
You have the
Okay.
warehouse space, you should use it.
Yeah, for what? Well, okay. But I had a printing company that did the same thing. All right, here we go. Hoarders. Dave, do you like hoarders?
No, but I don't know that I care what people do if they keep 5 newspapers or 20,000 copies. I don't know that it bothers me. Unless I live underneath them and they also like to smoke. Otherwise, I don't care.
One person's trash is another's. I don't even, is it treasure, Dawn? Okay. We're
Yes.
not, I guess we're not going to get into the psychological reasons of why people hoard.
Well, I don't know.
But-
When you did anybody keep like, the New York Times from September 11, 2001 and keep it and put it some box and something, and then you move 20 years later and find it and decide whether you throw it out or not? It's weird these days. Like back in the old days, you kept the stuff because you couldn't access the information or the memories. But now with the internet, I mean, it seems kind of a waste to keep the stuff.
Completely, almost 90% off topic. Almost.
No, it's not.
90%.
That's what hoarders do.
Okay.
They keep copies of newspapers.
Well, they do. All right. So is anyone on the panel familiar with a horrible hoarding situation, just so we can set the tone?
Yeah.
All right, Dawn, let's watch our time, but tell people how bad it can be and how bad it got for your example.
So condo unit, the door opens and the walls are moving. And the walls are moving because there's cockroaches everywhere.
Wow.
And flying things and the stench and the garbage. And I would say that it's something where you probably have to have a hazmat suit in some situations. And also from the smell, it induces a physical response. So you almost feel ill. But it's also sad in some ways because you know that some people are challenged. And so in those situations, it's really often an emergency situation where or a claim, an insurance claim has occurred that we've come into those. And they happen quite often.
So some people are saying my magazines contain very important articles. We're not talking about people that, like Dave said, store some old magazines. We're talking about safety and health issues here. Elliot, I'm putting you on the spot, but with no warning, which I love doing. Give me some safety and health concerns with hoarding, if you could think of any.
Well, I don't know that my law career primed me for that, but I do have 4 little kids at home and deal with a lot of stuff that builds up in my house. So I would say that some of the health concerns that can arise with hoarding can be things like insects, like we just heard. One thing that people do hoard sometimes is animals. That's something that we dealt with at our firm once. And, 1 kitty cat, adorable. 30 kitty cats, hazmat suits. And the thing is, in that situation, just that example, and something that could happen in other situations is, it's not just the lot or the unit where the hoarding is happening that's affected, it's everybody around them. And that's where the HOA board members and the managers find themselves in the position of everybody else looking at them saying, fix it, right?
So I did not have animals on my list, so thank you. We're talking about fire hazards here. We're talking about things that can combust into flames, overloaded electrical outlets. rodents, insects, and mold, blocked access for emergency responders if they have to get in there. And then, Dave Chesky from Falcon once brought up, we're talking about structural issues, which I never thought about. Some of these, Sean's nodding his head. Sean, do you think I missed anything? But it's bad. We're talking serious health, safety issues here.
For sure. And on the structural issue, first of all, I think it is a fairly comprehensive list that you itemized there, Ray. But this was, I mean, I've dealt with it a few times in my practice, but an even more interesting one was one that I read about, a story in the newspaper where they had interviewed the fire chief and asked him about his 5 most memorable hoarding stories. And one that hits on the structural theme is there's a lady whose hoarding thing that she liked to do is collect books, like old books. She would go to bookstore and she had so many books, just shelves and shelves of books stacked from the floor to the ceiling, that it was making the floors of the unit sag in to where they might like break through and pull off the walls and pull off the studs and really compromise the structural integrity of the building. So and also you couldn't get in the front door of the unit, and so she was using a ladder to come go through the window. So yeah, I mean, these things really do happen, and they're kind of entertaining to read about, but it's serious safety and health risks for sure.
All right, John. So there's a building, there's a hoarder, there's been complaints. Maybe there's insects getting all over the place. Maybe it smells. Maybe somebody just happened to glance in there. Maybe the building had to go in there for a leak one time. Whatever reason they find out, you got a hoarder. Is it the HOA's problem? Is it the board's issue or concern?
I think it is. So you have rules against nuisances and annoyances in virtually every association or condominium. So you have access rights, usually in your bylaws. If it's an emergency, you could actually break in. You have to balance that with, if someone's a hoarder, it's probably a mental issue, which is also Fair Housing Act territory, and you have to grant them a reasonable accommodation, but it has to be reasonable. And if someone is jeopardizing the structural integrity and safety, I think it's time to take action. There are fire chiefs that you should contact, adult protective services. If you could reach out, see if there's a family member, but there's things you should try. Yes.
Dave, hoarding, I heard from a manager recently, I'm going to change the circumstances here a bit. They've had this hoarder, they can't get rid of him. And John touched upon it a little bit because it's also considered a mental health condition. Can you take it from there? This is not an easy fix because you're dealing with people that, I'll let you take it from there, Dave. This is tough.
I think that a situation like this can be an association obligation. There's two different things. I think it can be an association obligation. For the most part, it's probably within the association's power, maybe not an obligation, but power, which would be a little different. But I don't know what the other guys have experienced, but judges will be skeptical and suspicious of anything you do. They will laugh at you. I mean, I'm being using hyperbole, but I guess I'll say, some judges can mock, like, why are you here? Then you try to get, the client wants to get the legal fees back. It's a big production. It's very difficult. And I think you should assume that if you go into court, at least my experience has been that judges will be skeptical and sometimes hostile. And so if you don't have all of your evidence lined up, meaning beyond the third party, well, I think I heard that guy over there has 20,000 books, and that's all you have. Well, you're not going to get very far with that.
Deb, is this something that the association, they take action? Are they going to be covered for their related costs? Can you talk about the insurance aspects of this a little bit?
So the situations where I've seen in insurance is, there's a water damage claim, right? And now we have to go in there. It makes it very difficult for the remediation companies because there's so much stuff that they have to move around. So it becomes an issue does that person have enough insurance to move all their contents out, move their contents in? It has to do with being able, life safety, being able to get in and out of a unit is very important to insurance companies, right? If there's a fire, you want to be able to get out of your unit. And if you have too much stuff in blocking your egress, that could be a problem.
Dawn, the manager goes to a unit, goes back, writes in a report that it's unsafe, it's a hazardous condition, you know, and then there's a fire.
Mhm.
Is that going to provide coverage or deny coverage in some way? Is there a risk of loss of coverage here if a board does not take action?
It depends. You know, it's always going to be the actions. Is it gross negligence or is it just negligence? And that's something the court is going to deem, but the insurance is going to respond. And in that scenario, most likely I wouldn't see a denial. But you know what we really do need to talk about in hoarding situations is the damage that occurs to the unit that's not insurable. So the insect or vermin damage and the pet urine, those type of things, bed bugs, that's a big situation. The extermination, that's not often covered by insurance. In fact, a lot of them have exclusions that prevent you from actually being able to use the insurance for that.
All right, so if I'm hearing right, attorneys, this is something that an association does have to look at, but they have to be very careful at what point they look at it, and they have to make sure they have all their ducks in a row. And we're going to go through the ducks right now. Does anybody disagree with this whatsoever? Okay, so nobody feels like you can ignore this problem. Okay, great. What I'm going to do is let's start going through what an association can do with the first step and the next step. But so Elliot, I'm going to start with you, but don't go through everything because I want to go through all the different attorneys, right? So let's say a hoarding complaint comes in. I don't know, Elliot, if you want to come up with some scenarios on how could hoarding complaints come in? Do you want to take a whack at that, Elliot, before we continue with you? But I'm trying to think, how would an association be aware of hoarding? Obviously, we know about the vermin, we know about the smell, we know about the water. What about if a family member reports it? Do we have to talk about that today at all, or?
Well, I think that the complaint about hoarding, I mean, it's probably not going to be the hoarder, right? So it's going to be the people being directly impacted by it usually. And in a condominium setting, that'll be the neighboring unit owners. In a planned community setting, that'll be the neighboring lot owners. And in my experience, many of those neighbors have been very vocal about, emailing board members, emailing managers, emailing my office and saying, there's a problem, the HOA needs to deal with it. That's how I've seen those complaints come in.
All right, so let's assume enough steps have taken place where the board has been put on notice, right? They can't claim they don't know about this anymore. Elliot, what's the first recommendation? What's the first step?
Well, I think there's a few things you probably need to do simultaneously, and I'll just touch on one. I think one is you need to read your governing documents, because you may have governing documents that give you special tools to deal with nuisances in ways beyond the generic nuisance language. And so I think, I'm not saying, I'm sure that some other panelists could talk about some other proactive things you could do, but I think you need to know, like, what are the rules that I'm playing under? Is this just nuisance, or do my governing documents have much more specific language, which many newer documents do?
Interesting. Really, really quick. What would be an example of that? Because I haven't heard anybody mention that the governing documents would, a safety issue or something?
So basically, instead of saying nuisances are prohibited, specifically defining, like, what is a nuisance? What is that? And then that tells you, okay, if I know what is a nuisance, what kind of stuff do I need to be documenting to show that this falls under that provision?
Okay. John, how do we get don't take all the steps, but how do we get the process started?
First thing is there a way to contact the person? Is there a family member? Be sensitive, but you have to make contact.
Any concerns with contacting a family member on the panel? We've kind of talked about that. No concerns in this case.
No,
Okay.
John, I think John's right. A judge may say to you the first thing, does this person have like any family, anybody, any contact people? It's just, I think that you'll get asked that question. I think John's right.
So are we always assuming then hoarding is a mental illness? Because if it wouldn't be a mental illness, you wouldn't contact a a family member if it was another kind of violation. I know I'm playing devil's advocate, John. I'm sorry. That's what I get.
Well,
paid
I
to
mean,
do.
yeah, I mean, you're hypothetical. When I heard it is, it's, there's no question it's a hoarding situation. So, yeah, I don't think it's just like newspapers being piled up. It's got to be smells and everything else that goes along with it.
Somebody is saying, what if an owner admits to being a hoarder to management? Is then management required to report this to the insurance carrier? I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Really, really quick, Dawn, does this have to, when you're put on notice, do you have to call the insurance carrier?
Well, what's the damage? That's, I feel like Heather from Heather's. What's the damage, Heather? There has to be an insurance claim.
Okay, so Deb, no damage, no report at this point.
Right, there's no trigger for the policy.
Okay, excellent. And thanks for the question. I appreciate that. All right, so I went back to John. So we're assuming that this person has a mental illness. If it's not so horrible, you're going to look at it like a nuisance complaint and follow those procedures, I guess. Is that what you're saying, John?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if it rises to a level that people are constantly complaining, there's odors. I'm assuming that's your question.
See how annoying I am, Elliot? This is what I have to do. I have to like come up with like 1,000 different scenarios. Sean, you've checked the governing documents. You've reached out to a family member. They're either unsuccessful or you can't find them. What's next?
I mean, I think John touched on it at the top that, I mean, hoarding has been recognized by the American Psychiatric Association as a mental disease. And so, it's likely, I think it's likely if it's a serious hoarder situation, or as you said, Ray, the homeowner has admitted to being a hoarder or other family members have, that you're essentially going to have to frame this as a request for reasonable accommodation. What can be done to provide an accommodation yet still alleviate the problem in the sense of the danger and the problems it's causing for the other residents. And I think that's where the line is ultimately going to be drawn, is what can be done to allow this person to keep their stuff that they want to keep, yet restrict the activity, restrict the violative behavior to the point that it is not negatively impacting other homeowners, because that's as far as, that's what the association is allowed to do. That's when the association is allowed to deny a request for a reasonable accommodation under the FHA, is if it so impacts other neighboring unit owners that the request is just unreasonable. It's more than we're have to allow you to do because of the impact on other people.
Okay, so before I go to Dave, nobody mentioned contacting a government agency. Really quick, panel, is there any reason that you guys didn't mention that because you're against it? Really quick, Elliot.
Oh, I think it's actually an important point, is that the HOA needs to remember you are the HOA, you are not the police, you are not the health department. And so you need to know there is a role for the HOA, absolutely. But this is something that comes up in all kinds of contexts. All clients contact me about potentially a hoarder situation, maybe a public safety situation, and I'll say, call the police. And so I think it's actually an important point is to know at what point do you need to do that. I think it's going to depend on what situation you're dealing with.
So Dave, you're not against the idea if you could make this someone else's problem, start off with that?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's watched our streams knows that I'd rather make it someone else's problem, because I don't, as an association attorney, I don't know the associations are set up to deal with these kinds of things any more than the police or the government is set up to do them. I think Elliot's exactly right. That's why I said before, I think you have to try to decide what box you're in. Are you in the box where we have to act, like in Sean's case where the building's falling down? That's a no-brainer. I mean, you're going to have to act. Or are we in the box of we can act? We have we're within our fiduciary duty, our discretion to act. That's when maybe you want to defer to the government and say, sorry, neighbors, I know it's really smelly. I know it's really bad, but we're not the police, we're the HOA. We're here to make sure the buildings don't fall down. We're not here to regulate the lives of people and how they live and how they should live. That's more of a political problem though when you get to that point. It's not, but I don't know that it's a legal one.
I love what you just brought up. You guys are impressive. You do impress me with your knowledge and how you guys look at things. Because if I heard you right, Dave, what you're saying is maybe you haven't reached the point where you're 100% feel it's a full out enforcement issue. Have somebody call the town. You know what I mean? Make an anonymous tip. Maybe that'll fix it. And then then the enforcement issue becomes full out association problem. Did I get that right?
Yeah, because you
yeah.
have associations, are depending on what type of association you are. If you're an association set up to preserve and protect the common area, the common elements, you can't let buildings fall down. You can't let floors sag. Whether it's going to be a pain in the butt to do it or not, you're going to have to do it, because if you don't do it, you'll have exposure. That's not the same though as neighbors being upset with how it smells and how loud it is, and how, whether the owner is nasty because he's mentally ill, but he walks home and he says curse words as he's walking down the street. I mean, that's not necessarily an association problem.
But potential fire safety hazards is, insects and vermin is, toxic mold is, all these things. Can I assume these are
toxic mold is a loaded thing anyway. I mean, a lot of experts will suggest that's a created.
Don't go there.
Okay, I'm not going there. I take it back. We don't have time. See what happens, Elliot? We're not going to talk about mold.
John's right. Let's not go there.
Let's assume now we're at the point where it's an enforcement issue, right? There's absolutely no, and Deb or Dawn, if you want to add a scenario in, by all means, just wave or something. I'm going to jump over to Elliot. Sean just left to be like the most horrible scenario possible for an association, right, Sean? Basically, you've got this, and now let's assume they're uncooperative, right? Because we're at that point, right? This is an uncooperative individual. You have no family members to help. And I know associations that are in this case. What are you going to do next, Elliot? Sean, you've got to be so careful because they have a mental illness. They're not cooperating with you or anyone. What's left? What are you going to do? What's going to happen next? What's the next step?
I think you have to start going through the appropriate enforcement process, because the argument's going to be you're violating a provision of the governing documents. And that will depend some on what state you're in as to what that is. But in many jurisdictions, that's notice, an opportunity to be heard, a notice of a decision, and then begin issuing fines to try to compel compliance with the governing documents. And one nice thing about fines is that one thing we haven't touched on is it's possible to tenant doing this, right? There's a whole separate situation. But fines levied on the property in a hearing, you get the attention of the owner of the property.
Didn't even think about that part. John, one part that Sean kind of scared me also, he said, you have to make an accommodation. That makes it even more complicated. So how is the association, and we're going to get over to Sean on this because he's the person who brought it up, but John, who decides what an accommodation is in regard to hoarding? Who's going to go in and decide all this? How feasible is it for an association to ever really solve this issue, short of what I guess we'll get into next?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about extreme situations, and almost every example it's extreme. I'm not very concerned about granting a reasonable accommodation to let someone endanger the property. I don't think that's a fair balance. I did mention before, or maybe you missed it, call the fire department. That's one of the first things you could do. Adult Protective Services and the fire department. I think that's because egress and ingress is important for the fire department, but if you're in attached homes, which most condominiums are, there's always a fire danger posed by hoarding. So I think, and condo can't break in, but the fire department can knock on the door.
I know an association where there's a hoarder problem, and the fire department's not going to take any action because it hasn't reached that level, but it's reached the level where you guys are saying it's become a somewhat of an issue where the association is forced to take action. They have an enforcement.
But then if they go and say it hasn't reached a level, you as a condominium board can say, well, it hasn't reached a level. So it kind of gives you like a defense.
If it's vermin though, and insects and things like that, it's a little bit of a gray area though. You know what I mean? The fire department and the health department may not be as quick. John, not a lot of cities are very responsive to everything. I mean, we always tell our audience, call the city and they'll help. I hear plenty of stories. Elliot, I think you're agreeing with me.
That's true.
I hear plenty of associations that call the city and they don't help at all. Am I wrong, Elliot?
Well, the funny thing is, I actually have a small local government practice, so I represent some local government. And you'd be amazed at the volume of the calls that the local
Right.
governments get about these situations. So that's why sometimes you don't see, it's not going to be called a government. Oh, we're going to fix it. You're right. You're right.
Okay, so Sean, we're back to you. You were talking about making a reasonable accommodation, a little bit of what, maybe expand on that a little bit. Watch our time, but we're not. And also, then I want you to go into nothing's working. There's no help from the government. Nothing's working. So run with it, please.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Let's assume, as you said, Ray, that you're not getting the help that from the code enforcement department, the fire department, or the police or protective services or what have you. Then the association is going to need to line this up and assume that you're going to need to be in a position where you can seek and obtain injunctive relief from a court order to allow the association to, enter into there with contractors and abate the violations and make it so that there's no longer a health and safety risk to the other residents of the building. And what you have to do, and I think David touched on this, is that you're going to need private expert opinions that dictate what needs to be done. In other words, tell the association, this is the steps that you need to take to eliminate the safety risks and the problem risks to other people, the neighbors. And that is something that you can rely on. That gives the association protection, allows it to use the business judgment rule, and also gives you a guideline of what can be defined as a reasonable accommodation. Once you're back into code compliance and you're satisfying what our distinguished expert says that you need to do to make the building safe, then you're good. Okay, then that's a reasonable accommodation. But until and unless you do that, you are in violation. You're beyond what we're going to allow you to do as a reasonable accommodation under the FHA, and we're going to proceed forward and seek an order from a judge that we come in and abate.
Okay, so comments from the audience are, I've had a few hoarding situations. It's not easy for sure. I've had to contact so many entities, including local and county. We have taken people to court. Court takes forever. And in the meantime, we have complaining residents. So Dave, is the moral of this story going to be, you're going to have to take somebody to court, and forcibly the court is going to order some forcible action to take place. Is that going to be where we're going to be at this if nothing else works?
Yeah, when I'm assuming you're hypothetical, that the actual facts line up to something that the association is supposed to be doing, because if you will, the judge will ask you these kinds of questions. Well, Mr. O'Connor, you say the floor is sagging. What did have you had your expert tell you whether it can be shored up for a couple of weeks so you can try to talk to the family more, and you have to, they're going to want a way to not get involved. I mean, it's just, like they're just human instinct, human nature. Judges won't want to be involved any more than we do. It'll be just like a hot potato, but you got to have everything lined up. And if you don't, I'll say one thing. One of the, and this was by John's question with John's point with the fire department was a good one too, is one of the struggles that my clients have had is the cart before the horse problem. Like sometimes you can't even determine what your exposures until you get in the unit, and you can't get in the unit unless you break the door down or you get a judge to let you go in the unit, but you can't get in the unit until you tell the judge you need to get in the unit. It's like
right.
Is that catch-22? Is that circular? I don't know what the white euphemism is for that, but that's kind of the thing, which is how do you get the evidence without doing something that you actually need evidence to do in the first place?
Really quick, best practices document. This is the same as everything. Document everything, involve professionals early, approach with empathy. These people do have a mental illness. Also, you don't want to get yourself sued. Have a clear nuisance safety and maintenance clauses and governing documents. Anybody on the panel upset that I mentioned those things? All right, let's go. I want to leave time for closing thoughts here too, but Elliot, really, really quick, if you could do it quickly. If you can't, I don't want you to do it. You have some experience dealing with government agencies. What would the process be once the court gets involved with this? Who's going to go in? And I guess, is the HOA going to be hands off at this point? They go to the judge, and then the judge says, okay, we're going to force, who's going to go in and actually force it? The sheriff, the police, what's going to happen?
So if and this could be different in different states, but if the HOA gets a court order to go and abate the nuisance, the HOA is the entity going in. If you have a judgment and the person is resisting the judgment, I would think there's a role for the sheriff there. There's an entirely separate process for a local government to get their own order of abatement, but those are two different things.
Okay, Deb, you have time for, I want to leave you time for a question if you had one for the panel. Maybe I didn't ask something, and insurance commentary. Deb, and closing thoughts.
Wow, I'm going to wrap it all up in one, huh?
Yeah, you're good.
So yes, you want to be very careful when you're dealing with a hoarding situation, but what you want to keep in mind is there is potential for insurance companies to come and inspect. And if that hoarding situation is now leaking out into common areas where people maybe are, storing their bicycles or they have plants. So insurance companies can also say to you that you need to remove these items from a hallway, a common hallway, or a balcony because it poses a life safety issue. You can worry about a non-renewal potentially for not taking care of those kind of situations. But yes, you need to be aware if there's any structural damage, animals, insects, and take the appropriate actions.
Am I hearing you right? You're saying contact the insurance company, have the insurance company make it a big problem for the association. Okay, you're saying I'm not hearing it right?
Yes, but you can't do it that way. It's just every couple of years they do inspect, and if they find an issue, they'll bring it up, and then it could be a bigger issue of a non-renewal.
So you don't want to agree with me, but I'm not that far off. Because you don't like the way I said it. You like the way you said it. As
you can't call the insurance company and say, come inspect.
Oh, okay. But that could be used against, you could use it. It's helpful. Look, you can go to the board, could say, we can't get insurance anymore. Now we have to solve this problem.
That is,
okay.
Yes, you can use that.
It's funny how I hear things so much differently sometimes.
So differently.
Okay. Dawn?
Yeah, I like what you just brought up to Deb, because a lot of times our boards will ask, why do I have to do something? There's no law or there's no requirement to do it. But the insurance carriers are providing millions of dollars of insurance coverage if there's damage or if there's a lawsuit. So they'll ask you to do things because in hindsight, it's preventative, right? And I think, with Scott earlier talking about maintenance regarding concrete, but even just general maintenance, and with hoarding, it's a difficult situation. And inspections, by the way, don't occur inside a unit. We don't typically go inside. If they do ask, they might want to see, maybe a board member allows them, but we're not going to specifically go and find the bad parts.
All right. Elliot, like 30 seconds, closing thoughts.
Well, as we talked about, a lot of these situations arise from owner complaints. And I would just encourage managers and boards when they begin their investigation to be objective, because you're not on the side of the complaining owner. You are on the side of the association. The complaint is a reason to investigate, but you're not their prosecutor. You're not their personal police force. And I think it's important to be objective and look at what actually is going on. Is it actually a problem? That's an important part of the initial analysis when you get a complaint from an owner.
John, closing thoughts.
Focus on whatever way you can get in to inspect the unit, and then if you can't do that, then my advice is to go for government officials. They can do things a lot faster than you going to court.
Sean, before you do closing thoughts, I see this as a nightmare situation for boards, and it's going to be extremely frustrating, and it's just going to be horrible if it's a real psycho with the hoarding.
I think it's a solution that usually can be solved. Let me provide a small measure of hope and encouragement to our managers who express concern that court always takes forever. It need not always take forever. If you've got an emergency situation where there's health, life, and safety risks, there are procedures under the rules of civil procedure that allow you to go before a court pretty quickly to seeking a temporary restraining order, a temporary injunction, and get a hearing within a week or so. And then if it really is an emergency, a judge is going to order that, you be allowed to take that action. And if the judge doesn't see it as an emergency and orders that accordingly, then, you might consider that a failure. But the good news about that is it protects the HOA, because you tried to get a court order to get in there and the court wouldn't allow it. So you did everything you could, but I think in most
Right.
cases, if it truly is a safety risk, a judge is going to help you and let you get in there.
All right, Dave, less than 1 minute. Closing
Yeah,
thoughts.
my colleague lawyers all made great points. As usual, I would double on piggyback on what Elliot said, which is that your associations need to decide if this is really something that is within the association's obligation or whether it's in its discretion. The two aren't necessarily the same. The latter is discretion, which is more like, do we want to take action? Do we want to do this? The former is, we have to do this, even if it's going to cost us money or be very difficult or require us to go to court.
Check with your lawyer, audience. Check with your attorney before you do anything. Panel, anybody have a problem? This is minefield territory here. Check with your attorney. Everybody, you're crazy if you don't. You agree?
Correct.
Great.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for being here so much. Elliot, it was awesome seeing you. I hope you come back. I know you're planning to come back, so don't try to come up with an excuse that you can't now. That being said, good luck. I'll send everybody some links, and I hope to see everybody tomorrow for the manager thing. They're really fun. All right. Bye, everybody. See you. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.